And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi there, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Friday, August 1st, 2025. And we start with the state of the sea ice. And interestingly enough, we have some remnant ice up here in the Chukchi Sea before it kind of more transitions to the Arctic Ocean. And it's multi-year ice. That's why it's been slower to melt off in this area compared to maybe at this time of year normally. And as we work our way eastward, there's still some remnant ice here along the Beaufort Sea coast between Utqiagvik and Kaktovik, and we'll just continue to see a gradual late summer melt off with minimum ice, climatologically speaking, happens around the equinox, third week or so in September. And looking at satellite imagery, we still have this circulation of low pressure, lower Gulf, North Pacific. There's another trough with rain pushing through Cordova this Friday afternoon. It'll be moving into the Chugach Mountains, south central areas, enhancing some better rainfall around Anchorage and Matsu Valley, and as it bumps up along the east and southeast facing slopes of the Alaska Range. Also an enhancement to some rain upper Tanana Valley. But to the west, we have a couple areas of low pressure, one here over the central Bering and another impulse south of the Aleutian chain, this front working its way gradually eastward. But the most noteworthy feature, ridge of high pressure around Bristol Bay extending all the way up along the west side of the state into the central northern interior, continuing up along the Canadian Arctic coast. This is going to be some of the best weather you've seen in a while, and perhaps this for the latter part of the summer, because sunshine, drier conditions, temperatures in the 70s, even a few lower 80s possible through the course of this weekend. Eventually, though, a cold front will be coming down out of the Arctic Ocean, sweeping along the Arctic coast, North Slope and Brooks Range as we get into Monday morning. So for Saturday, still this pesky low with some showers around it, a few light showers lingering parts of the Panhandle, and the rain still ongoing here south and east of the Alaska Range across south central areas, Talkeetna Mountains, Chugach. To the west, we find that low just sitting and spinning in the central Bering with the front creeping eastward. Weak secondary low tries to develop. Shouldn't be too much development, at least initially, with that, but then still high pressure ridge across areas of the mainland into northwest Canada. Sunday, we find that the ridge begins to break down a bit, not as strong as what it was Friday, Saturday. There's that cold front approaching from the northwest by Sunday afternoon, evening. Weak high pressure off the Kenai coast with this. The low finally opens up here in the Gulf, North Pacific. Few light showers continuing in the Panhandle, but that feature finally washing out, and then out to the west we have in the central Bering. Low pressure continues to sit and spin. The front just weakening, and the secondary low, not too much of an impact expected, at least initially, though it may bring eventually that energy riding northeastward toward the Gulf Coast could bring some rain there early next week. So the forecast for marine weather here on Saturday, winds are going to be kind of a mixed bag in the inner channels. South there, Ketchikan, Metlakatla, southeast, Stevens Passage, northeast up at Lynn Canal with waves a foot or two. Outer coast, south winds, south-southeast winds, Craig, Sitka, Port Alexander, 10 knots, turning southeast to easterly 15 to 20 knots. Outside of Yakutat Bay to Cape Suckling with waves 4 to 5 feet. On Sunday, generally southeast winds 10 to 15 knots, inner channels, a wave foot or two, but maybe 2 to 3 feet, 15 knot southeast winds down there around Ketchikan and Metlakatla. South-southeast winds 15 knots riding up the coast off of Craig, Sitka. Turning easterly outside of Cross Sound, 15 knots, and then east-northeast winds, Yakutat Bay toward Cape Suckling. Waves generally just a few, 3-4 feet. Cross Prince William Sound Saturday, easterly winds 10 knots, waves a couple of feet at best. East winds 15 to 20 knots, Kayak Island outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance. As we drop down along the Kenai coast, northeast winds 15 knots. Southeast winds into lower Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, 20-knot winds, 4-5 foot waves. And as we come up along Anchor Point to Kenai and toward Anchorage, southwest to south winds at 20 knots with waves of 4 to 5 feet. For Sunday, winds generally westerly within Prince William Sound at 10 knots, waves a foot or two. Off the Kenai coast outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, we're looking at west winds 15 knots, waves 3-4 feet, but easterly winds at Kennedy Entrance and Kamishak Bay at 15 knots with waves around 2-3 feet, turning southwesterly at 10 knots as we round Anchor Point and work our way up toward Anchorage with waves there 2 to maybe 3 feet. Saturday, we'll see northeast winds 15 knots within Shelikof Strait, 2 to 3 foot waves. Variable winds on the east side of Kodiak Island, but then southeast to east winds 20-25 knots even there within Bristol Bay, and turning more southerly to 15 knots either side at Cold Bay and Falls Pass. For Sunday, easterly winds 15 knots around Kodiak Island. Look for easterly winds 25 knots Chicknick. And as we trail out down along the Alaska Peninsula, southeast to east winds around 20 knots. Waves 4 to 5 feet on the North Pacific side and 3 to 5, maybe 6 feet there as you get east of Cold Bay. Now the low circulations up here in the Bering, north of the Aleutian chain, is going to cause a broad southwesterly flow around 25 knots, eastern central Aleutians on Saturday. And then as we get further west, it may be as high as 30 knots, Kiska to Shimia from the southwest to west. And then for Sunday, generally still south winds, far eastern Aleutians 25 knots, veering southwest, Nikolsky, Atka, Adak, and then turning more westerly 20 to 25 knots once you get west of Adak, especially through Kiska and Shimia. Saturday, the Pribilovs will see south winds 20 knots, waves maybe 7-8 feet. Look for southeast winds to 25 knots within Kuskokwim and Bristol Bays with waves 3 to 5 feet. Offshore flow of 20 knots along the lower Yukon coast with waves 3 to 4 feet, and a 10-knot easterly wind out of Norton Sound with waves running a couple of feet on Saturday. On Sunday, winds will be southerly across the Pribilovs, 20-knot winds, waves 6-7 feet. We have southeast to east winds, Bristol, Kuskokwim Bay at 25 knots, so waves still 3-4 feet there. Offshore flow generally along the lower Yukon coast at 20 knots, 3-4 foot waves, and then southerly winds like on up toward Nome, 10-15 knots with waves a couple of feet. And as we look at areas south of the Bering Strait, look for easterly winds 10 to 15 knots off of the west side of the Seward Peninsula, north side of St. Lawrence, waves a couple of feet there, Wales, Port Clarence, but maybe as high as 3-4 feet out toward Gamble. And as we round up through the Chukchi, south winds turn southwest and then eventually westerly at Utqiagvik, 10-15 knots. And then a mixed bag of east-southeast winds, Prudhoe Bay, Kaktovik. Keep in mind, it's going to be a warm day in areas here, North Slope, even down along portions of the Beaufort Sea coast, especially with any offshore flow. Some areas could still be 70 plus, if you're not right near the water. And then for Sunday, cold front will be approaching from the northwest, and we expect winds to be west-southwest, 10-15 knots along the Beaufort Sea coast, maybe locally southwesterly 20 knots there ahead of that front. Sunday afternoon, evening at Utqiagvik with waves 3 to 4 feet. And then coming down, Kotzebue Sound will have southeast winds 5 to 10 knots, kind of shore parallel to Kivalina, with waves only a foot or two in the lower Chukchi Sea. And then the west side of the Seward Peninsula, Wales down toward Nome, east winds 10 knots, 15-knot easterly winds north side of St. Lawrence Island, and waves in those areas running on Sunday generally 2 to 3 feet.